those elements of the treaty where states are on shore. It is the duty of the court, I say, to give directions, to interpret matters referred to it, to resolve conflicts within the states wherever there is a dispute. I must tell you, though, that my government in Antigua and Barbuda, we are prepared to look at the soonest possible time, just like Dominica, just like Belize, Guyana, and Barbados, to move forward to bringing within the appellate jurisdiction Antigua and Barbuda. We want to congratulate the court. It has started already in the movements. I remembered in the early 2000s, Justice Byron and the others came to Antigua at Jolly Beach, and they had many meetings with many sectors of the economy. We in Antigua and Barbuda will start that education process. We'll be asking the court to assist us in this regard. We intend to bring the people on stream. We shall be making approaches to the opposition parties, the NGOs, Ms. Spencer, and others, to get together, let us educate the nation, because to be a truly integrated region, we must have regard for and establish and support the Caribbean Court of Justice. How can we reside in the state, in the region, in the space, where in matters involving the law, it's referred to the Privy Council? They're not familiar with our way of life. For example, husband and wife, the case of Hope and Davis, which gives recognition to common law unions. Common law unions, that is a result of understanding the West Indian community. I dare say, we must appreciate that this court must be given the full support of every country which has signed that treaty. We must develop our Caribbean jurisprudence, and that must be done by the Caribbean Court of Justice. So far, I've had the opportunity of reading most of the judgments of the court. I have absolutely no doubt that the context, the quality of judgment, the reasoning can be matched with that of privy councillors. One argument I understand as well, they're saying, is that the judges are not all West Indians. They say some are recruited all from Canada, etc. But we are in the growing status. In England, for centuries, they have developed their law. We must, as Caribbean people, to be proud, we must make sure that every country in the region, I repeat, supports, subscribes to, and make certain that their country become a part of the appellate jurisdiction of the CCJ. I close by saying this to you. We in Antigua and Barbuda understand the significance of the court. We understand the important role the court plays in its original jurisdiction. We also understand that in order to properly develop our jurisdiction in criminal and civil matters, the court must be given the fullest support to act and refer and to give judgments which are autochthonous, which in a society like ours, with our own idiosyncrasies, the judges will be familiar with our societies. The judgments will reflect our societies. The judgments will reflect the type of life to which we are accustomed in the region. And I say to all and sundry, to all Antiguans and Barbudans, get ready. Very shortly, we'll be having a referendum on this particular matter. We shall start the process. We shall be looking at our ambassador, Clarence Henry, to lead the charge, to be in the vanguard. We'll be asking the CCJ to send persons down here to help educate the people. We shall start in Antigua and Barbuda an education process. We shall not be left behind. I remember I said earlier, it was the three birds Bird, Barrow, Burnham, who started Carifta many, many years ago. It was continued on the Lester Bird. It was continued on the Honorable Baldwin Spencer. And it is continuing now on the Honorable Gaston Brown. We shall bring to fruition the dreams of our forefathers, the forerunners who foresaw what true Caribbean integration is all about. And this court, the CCJ, is a pivotal and integral part of it. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Minister Benjamin, for that presentation. May I now invite the Honorable Vincent Byron, Attorney General of St. Kitts and Nevis, for his contribution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Ambassador Henry. And I would like to extend thanks to you and the government of Antigua and Barbuda for having me here, along with Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris. The forum that we are here today involved in, CARICOM, Overcoming Challenges, Pathway to Development, is a critical discussion relating to regional integration. The actual session that we are now under the role of the Caribbean Court of Justice within the context of the revised CARICOM Treaty, the Treaty of Chaguaramas. I think that at the onset, we need to establish the CCJ. I think Mr. Justice Olson Nelson set out very clearly the basis on which the CCJ operates. But I would like, in my own way, to repeat very simply that there are two Hello? Yeah, thank you very much. I think the CCJ is based on two jurisdictions, the original jurisdiction and an appellate jurisdiction. And while our discussion looks at the role of the CCJ in the context of the Treaty of Chaguaramas, of the CSME, which basically sets up the CCJ in its original jurisdiction, I should say a brief word about the appellate jurisdiction. Currently, all but 4 members of CARICOM, English speaking, have the Privy Council in London as its final court. So that if anyone has a matter before the High Court, especially in the OECS, we can appeal to the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, and as our final court, the matters have to go to London. This also happens in Jamaica, Trinidad. And we would like, ultimately, to establish a Caribbean court that has the CCJ as its final appellate court. It is something that is surprising, and I suspect to some confusing, because every one of our countries have signed up to the CCJ. They've all paid fully to be a part of the CCJ. And we do not use it as our appellate court, final appellate court. We in St. Kitts and Nevis will be engaging shortly in a debate to bring to fruition a decision on the question of having the CCJ as its final court, appellate court. But when it comes to its original jurisdiction, we are already a part of that court, as is Antigua and Barbuda and all other courts. And this is the basis on which we would want to have an arbiter, an interpreter of the issues that may emerge between individual nations, territories within our region. And as Justice Nelson has pointed out, there is mechanism for individuals in the region to also approach a court when they have disputes against other countries other than where they live. I think that I want to touch on the case Shanique Myrie, a Jamaican national who entered Barbados and felt that her rights had been violated. And she approached the CCJ. And her claims were vindicated when the CCJ declared that her rights had been violated. And it's an important judgment as it relates to the CSME, because one of the major issues in our CARICOM region is the question of migration. All of us are affected by the movement of peoples within our region. We have Dominicans coming to Antigua, Guyanese coming to St. Kitts, Jamaicans. There's a flow of Caribbean people throughout the islands. It's within us, it's on us, and it's part of who we are. For over 100 years, Caribbean peoples have been moving from one island to another in search of work and better opportunities for themselves and their families. And in some cases, there are individuals in some islands who feel affronted by it. But it's very clear. We have a court that has interpreted the Treaty of Chaguaramas that leads to the bare fact that there will be free movement of peoples within the region. And the role of the CCJ in being able to interpret, to enforce the applicability of our regional integration movement is very, very important in the whole process of regional integration. I was very intrigued by the discussion of Professor Persaud earlier when he indicated, he posited the view that we should look forward to the future, that we needed to have a vision of what we would like our region to be 15, 20, 50 years hence. And to be able to arrive at such a place, we need to have institutions that we can rely on, that we can trust. And it's incumbent on all of us in this region to realize that we must come to believe in and trust in the Caribbean Court of Justice. We need to repatriate fully the whole question of our independence. We should no longer be in a position to want to rely on a former colonial master to have the final say in how we live, being dictated to by people many miles away who do not understand our culture, who do not live among us. We have to have confidence in our people, and so the role of the CCJ in the context of the revised CARICOM Treaty is one in which we must place our faith and encourage through political discourse, through encouraging our leaders to do what it would be to make such a vision, as the professor has said, a reality. Finally, I would like just to say that it's not just in the question of free movement, but there are other areas as well that the treaty, the CARICOM Treaty, needs to be interpreted. Questions of the movement of capital and various other services. I think at one point there was the question of new areas that may not have been interpreted, included in the original treaty, that now may be needed to be brought under the umbrella of the treaty, such as data. Again, this is one of the major points that were raised where, as we move forward, where there's need for technological spread throughout our various countries, to have a paradigm shift in the way in which we deliver services to our people, that there needs to be underpinning of the role of the Caribbean Court of Justice in terms of movement of data and the very use of the issue of broadband and other technological ICTs and so forth. And so therefore, I'd like just to, like my friend QT Benjamin, to promote the whole concept that it's time for us in the region to give our full support to the Caribbean Court of Justice and move to have it installed not just as the final court, our court of original jurisdiction, but the final appeal court for all our peoples in the Caribbean community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Vincent Byron, Attorney General of St. Kitts and Nevis. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at that point, the question and answers. It is now open to you to participate, to pose your questions. Thank you, my friend. Yes, my lady.
I support 100%.
Yes, it's on. It's on. It's on.
I said I'm not a proponent also, council. And I want to be clear that I support the Caribbean Court of Justice. But I believe that the leaders in the Caribbean are doing a very bad job in selling the idea. Very bad job in selling the idea. This is a new concept which touches the hearts and minds of the people of the Caribbean. The Privy Council has served us well over the years. And it is a bad approach to continue to condemn the British court. The Privy Council is not a British court. The Privy Council, when it sits as a court for the country to which it serves. So it's wrong for Caribbean jurists, Caribbean politicians to give Caribbean people the idea that the Privy Council is a British court. It has little or no role to play in jurisprudence in the British realm. It is a court for Antigua when it sits for Antigua. Our jurisprudence, as I listen to the senior judge, if just as it is in respect of interpretation of the treaty,
Revised treaty.
revised treaty. In fact, it is developing its own jurisprudence along the line going through. So it is, I believe it will have to develop its jurisprudence in the appellate jurisdiction when it takes hold of that aspect. And so I think we should have a different approach of giving credence to the good that the Privy Council would have done in the past and sell the idea, stop selling the idea that it is far from us, external to us, and because very much a lot of the precedent that will be used by this court going forward going to have to be some of which that come from the judicial arm in Britain, which is the House of Lords and so on, cases provided, and from the Privy Council, and from Dominion law in Canada and all over the Commons. So this idea of selling to people that the Privy Council is a British, far away, they don't understand our thing, and so we need to stop that and make people understand clearly. We're developing something for us. The Privy Council has done a good job for us, but here, we've reached the juncture when we have to move on from the Privy Council to our own people to decide our own legal processes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. May I invite our Attorney General first? Oh,
Yes.
sure.
Just quickly, the question that the Privy Council is not a British court, that may be one interpretation that you give, only to say that the members of the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council are the same members of the House of Lords. They are the same individuals who sit as the final court for Britain. And therefore, they are British judges. The issue, when we say they are far away, and that it's a question of access to justice. The question of access to justice. And if we were to look at each one of our Caribbean countries who still have the Privy Council as its final court, you'd be surprised to know that on average, you may have one case per year that goes to the Privy Council. The average ordinary citizen cannot afford to engage the Privy Council. And normally, you'd find that it's only big corporations or governments who can afford, or deep pockets, who can afford to access justice of the Privy Council as a final court. And I'm sure Justice Walson Nelson will tell you that within the Caribbean Court of Justice, ordinary people in Guyana, in Belize, and Barbados, who are currently using the CCJ as its final court, they are now using the facilities of the Caribbean Court of Justice, and ordinary people have access, open access to the CCJ, whether it is in terms of the itinerant nature of the court, that is, the court has traveled to Barbados, it has been to Jamaica, it moves around, there are questions of video conferencing, and so forth. So the first point that one must make the distinction with the Privy Council And I dare to say that makes the CCJ a superior court to the Privy Council for the Peoples of the Caribbean has to do with access to justice.
And friend from St. Kitts, Mr. Bradburn. No one is discrediting the fact that the Privy Council over the years did not, in fact, make significant rulings which we must follow. And in fact, when we argue cases in this region, we look at the Commonwealth generally, Canada, they are persuasive authority. The situation is that we must become Caribbean people. It's a part of our development. We have the competencies in the region. And apart from what my friend has indicated, accessibility is one of the greatest things. For example, in Antigua, look at that case involving the Observer newspaper. If those persons didn't have deep pockets, they would not have been able to go to the Privy Council for justice. That has now been wiped away by the presence of the CCJ. So, my friend, Mr. James, I know you are very keen on matters of this nature, and I expect you to be one of those who will join with me as we promote the CCJ in Antigua. I shall be inviting you to be at my side as we travel the country promoting the CCJ in the region, in Antigua.
Thank you, Attorney General. Yes, Madam.
Mr. Benjamin, I must say that I emphatically support the CCJ. But I do not share your view that the Privy Council, they are not familiar with our way of life in the Caribbean. And I must say that I am Sandra Williams. I am a public officer, and I am also a trade unionist. For years, they have adjudicated over our cases, and we have won many judgments, to include that of Eloy de Freitas versus the Permanent Secretary. And you can remember that case. It was a landmark case. And I must also say that Eloy did not have deep pockets. And my question to you now is, you said that all of the judges on the CCJ are not from our region. Therefore, what mechanism will be put in place to ensure that they become familiar with our way of life in order that the judgment will reflect these? Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General.
As indicated, my friend, I merely stated the naysayers who are indicating that if we are promoting the CCJ, why is it that some judges are from outside the region? The whole concept of the CCJ is that we get the best minds within and outside the region to adjudicate matters to help develop our jurisprudence. And if in fact you check the court, the vast majority of the judges are from within the region. It helps, it doesn't detract from getting perhaps a specialist augment the work of the court. This will help the court to grow. We are in our embryonic. England took centuries, from 1066, the Wars of the Rose and before, developing their system. Let us therefore, let it be our determination, I say, as proud Caribbean men, that bind us. We be afraid to take the step to fully embrace our court. Our court is necessary, it's mandatory. And remember, I indicated, we are not saying that judgments have not been very good. They have been very good. But let us do our own thing. Let us promote the West Indianism, Caribbeanism by our judges.
Yes.
My question is to Justice Nelson. What guarantee, I want you to explain more, what guarantee we as Caribbean people have that the judges will be, their salary and incentives will be enough to ensure that there's no political influence towards these judges, because they're coming from the Caribbean, hence they're going to know everybody. That is what I wanted.
Thank you.
Yes, well, I think the first thing is that to become a judge, you must have a measure of integrity. And it is the prime requirement. If you look at the treaty, it says that a judge would only be chosen if he is outstanding in terms of his integrity, in terms of his independence, and so on. Now, having said that, the point that I wish to make was that one cannot have a situation, ought not to have a situation in which politicians have some control over the type of emoluments that the judge gets. For example, in Trinidad and Tobago, the politicians have absolutely no control over judicial salaries. So they can't say, well, we're not going to give you an increase because we are not satisfied with how you're treating us. That can't happen because in Trinidad and Tobago there's an independent salaries review commission. What happens is when they decide that this is the level of remuneration that is recommended, they simply notify the president, and the president notifies the prime minister, and then there is a laying before parliament, and that's it. So that what I'm saying is that the chink in our armor so far is that in the Caribbean Court of Justice set up under the agreement establishing the treaty, the salaries and allowances of judges still have to be approved by the politicians, i.e. the heads of government. That leaves room for sort of, you might even call it subliminal political influence. And I think that is wrong, and that has to be changed. But having said that, I assure you that the independence